on the show today, we have two incredible women, very inspirational for me personally. I met them while we were traveling across the country on 3 vintage train cars, not things you normally meet people nowadays, but nonetheless, we became fast friends as the countryside sped under our wheels. And Cameron was a fellow participant. We were both pursuing our passions, doing projects in southern cities, and Jessica was part of the incredible Millennial Trains project team. And we quite a journey. And so now we're here to talk about communication. Cameron, in addition to being an amazing poet and writer, is also the director of digital strategy at the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, and Jessica Straus is the director of communications at the Millennial Trains project, and has also formerly done speechwriting in DC with those policy wonks. So, you guys, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us. Aloha.
Aloha. So Cameron, we'll start with you. Can you talk about, what does it mean, digital strategy, exactly? What are some of the things that you do every day, or some of the things that you deal with?
Great question. So digital strategy encompasses basically all communications that happen from our agency online. So that includes social media, our website, our blog, videos, photos, anything that goes up online that communicates anything that our office does falls under digital strategy.
Cool. So that's your office and organizational structure, communicating out to how many people? What's your audience like?
So we have about 23,000 Twitter followers. We actually just started our Facebook page, first ever Facebook page, earlier this year. So we have about 2,300 Facebook followers, and we have about 80,000 to 100,000 monthly visitors to our website.
Awesome. And so you were the one who put these structures of communication into place for the office, right?
I inherited the Twitter account when I got it. We were at about 8,000 followers. So that was one of my tasks, was to grow that audience. And I created a Facebook page, and one of the hurdles of working in the federal government is getting through our lawyers to get permission to start new accounts. So that's been a struggle for me, but that's why we didn't have a Facebook page beforehand. But slowly but surely working on it. We have a Flickr account and working on a Google Plus account. And so yeah, I'm just trying to sort of build out our social media.
Awesome. And that's what's so interesting, I guess, about the position of digital strategy that didn't exist, 10 years before, is that there's so many new ways to communicate from an organizational standpoint.
Yeah, I always say that when I was in college and thinking about what I was going to do after I graduated, my job didn't exist. And these jobs, and even after I graduated, one of my first roles was in a public affairs shop at a big agency here in DC, government agency, and we weren't on social media at all. And so I was struggling to convince the head of the public affairs shop that we needed to be on Twitter and we needed to be on Facebook. And now that agency has hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and Facebook, and they do all the things that I had hoped that they would do. But this was back in 2008, and no one was even thinking about digital strategy then. Although there were organizations in government that were doing decent work online, it just wasn't the industry that it is now. So I think all it takes to be in digital strategy, if you're already in communications, is a willingness to learn new things and a willingness to write HTML if you have to, and because anyone can do it once you get to a certain level. I think what differentiates digital people from traditional communicators is a willingness to say yes to whatever else new is coming down the pike, even if later you have to discard it.
Yeah, and you were in such an exciting time, the 2008, 2000, around that time, I guess that was really just the beginning, because the digital open government, the open government initiative directive was announced in 2009, and so that's sort of when the White House first got their Twitter account and everything. You kind of see this trickle down effect almost with that, where you guys in DC have that, you guys are really pretty advanced compared to what we have in Hawaii, where we're just beginning to do that now. So that's really interesting, that journey. And so what about you, Jess? And so you right now are Director of Communications for Millennial Trains Project, and that's such an interesting story to tell. I mean, that's fascinating. So what kind of, what elements of, I guess storytelling, because how do you explain, what it is that you do, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. So being Director of Communications for the Millennial Trains Project is pretty much the opposite in terms of what kind of constraints we have that Cameron is dealing with. We can do pretty much whatever we want on social media, and we do. We really try to leverage social media in every way that we can, but traditional media has been really important to us in terms of communicating our story, building our story, just getting this idea of putting young people on a train and taking them across the country is a completely new idea in the U.S. And it really wasn't done until August of 2013. But prior to that, we spent the year preceding the first journey building this idea in the public eye. So our founder, Pat, has done a really good job of creating a vision and creating a lexicon that we can use, which is really important in storytelling. You need a very clear story that you can tell, and that you can tell over and over and over again, so that everyone on the team is very familiar with what exactly to say and what the different building blocks of the story are. And so the basic story is that the idea for running a train across the country comes from India, and this has gone on for nearly a decade, and it has this transformative power. When you put a lot of young people on a train and show them their country and expose them to different things, they become aware of the different opportunities and challenges that exist. And we brought that idea to the U.S., where, as we know, train travel is a totally different animal here in the U.S. And so we dealt with a lot of challenges in making the train journey happen, which I think ultimately made the journey more interesting. Planning a route that goes from coast to coast is a challenge in itself. But what we were able to do in the press is grab a hold of the imagination of a few key reporters who helped us tell this story. National Geographic immediately cottoned on to the idea, ABC News, Washington Post. They have all been really helpful in establishing this idea as a legitimate idea.
Definitely, and it seems like, when you're thinking about your narrative for the organization, it helps to look at what other organizations' narratives really match up, so that you can make both of the stories stronger through combining the forces, of like Nat Geo and Millennial Trains. I mean, that's the perfect story right there. So that's really interesting. I like that perspective, and I like the idea of having, these words, the lexicon that you use, and not to, because it's very, when I did my project on the Millennial Trains project, for my project called Governance Futures Lab, it was my first time doing communications by myself. I mean, I had an Institute for the Future supporting me, but it did really help to sort of almost have a document of these different phrases and like different words that I was using, so that it wasn't something that I had to like think about new each time, or that my audience wouldn't get confused, because words mean so much to different people. Like, a word is very powerful, and so many perspectives on it change the definition. So that's, I think, a really good lesson. And just like, with poetry, every word counts. Like on Twitter, every word really does count. It's almost haiku-esque.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've loved about Twitter that has changed, I think it actually changed right before we went on the trip back in August. You can do line breaks in Twitter now, which is great for poetry, but it's also, I've used it for invitations, or like what, when, where type announcements, and but I think it's best suited for poetry, of course. I also wanted to piggyback off something that Jessica said about traditional media being important, because as much as I think that every organization should have a strong digital presence, like, it would all be for nothing if you didn't get any coverage in the press. I mean, getting coverage in traditional media is what gives your organization legitimacy. It's what catches other people's eye. I mean, you can say I have, 1 million Twitter followers, but if you've never been profiled in the Washington Post, like, you're missing a key piece of your communication strategy. Which we saw actually recently, right before Christmas, our communications director sort of tagged on to a story about Bill de Blasio's daughter coming out about her struggles with addiction and mental health issues. And we got a quote from our director in almost every story about her announcement, and we could have never done that through Twitter or Facebook or our website. Like, it had to be through reporters. And it was a huge win for us from a communications perspective, and that you just can't do that through social media or your blog alone.
Definitely. Was that something that, and the quote from your director, did they go to him, did the mainstream press go to him to get that quote, or was it about somewhere else?
No, actually, we saw that this was happening, that this announcement was coming out, and it was getting a lot of play in the press early on, and we put out a statement right away. And I can't take credit for any of this. This was all my boss's doing. But we put out a statement right away, and then just started telling the reporters who were writing about it, who would be writing about it, that we already have relationships with, that this was our stance. And coming from an agency that's, coming from the director of our office used to be the chief of police for 3 different cities, and so hearing a message in support of someone who's recovering from addiction, who's had substance abuse problems in the past, is sometimes a surprising thing for reporters to hear, so they're more likely to cover it. But it took a proactive messaging on our part.
Right, exactly. And putting that, and because, as a journalist, it's not easy. You want sort of to find these quotes and just plug them in to where they need to be. So we're gonna take a little break, and we're gonna talk more about communication and the many possible ways to communicate to the masses these days and tell a good story. You're watching Think Tech Hawaii. My name is Lindsay K. Wilbur, and this is the Millennial Entrepreneur streaming live to you from the downtown heart of Honolulu. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel. This is Think Tech Hawaii, broadcasting live from the Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. We raise public awareness about tech, energy, and globalism in Hawaii. Technology is critical to our state. A vibrant tech sector will give us new prospects in the global marketplace and will offer great careers and make our economy more resilient. Streaming live on Ustream and Spreaker, ThinkTech allows its hosts and guests invaluable opportunities to report important events and discuss important questions, and to be heard here in Hawaii and around the world. You can find links to our live streams on thinktechhawaii.com or on our mobile website, m.thinktechhawaii.com. And you can see our archive on YouTube. It's all just a click away. We want to do whatever we can to keep Hawaii relevant, connected, and thriving in the complexity of the 21st century. We hope you will help us in those efforts. Tune in today. This is Think Tech. I'm Jay Fidel.
It's in Utah, in like southern Utah.
Cool.
It's a 3-hour drive from Las Vegas. I've really looked into it today.
I know.
I look retarded.
Line breaks on Twitter. All right.
Break for digital poet.
Oh, okay. Oh, hey guys, aloha. Welcome
Aloha.
back to the Millennial Entrepreneur. My name is Lindsay K. Wilbur, and we're here at Think Tech at Pioneer Plaza, streaming live to you. And we have with us Cameron Hardsty, the Director of Digital Strategy at the White House Office of Drug Control Policy, and also Jessica Straus, the Director of Communications at the Millennial Trains Project, and also a former speechwriter for the House Majority Leader. And Jessica, I'm really curious because, being a speechwriter, what is that like? What is that like putting words into the mouth of a very influential man?
Well, it can be a nerve-wracking experience, especially if you have a boss like I did who will read every word that you write, no matter what you write. So you have to make sure that it's absolutely perfect, or you will be watching the TV or in the audience and you will have a heart attack. So I think the first thing is starting with just going back to this point of the lexicon. I think it's really, really important in communications to know exactly what the words that your boss or company is comfortable with and how they express a given idea. So there's always like a home base of ideas, if you will. Like for my boss, it was always about job creation, economic growth, small business. It was just always about those things. So everything went back to those principles. And to write a long speech that's 10 minutes or more, it's basically like writing a research paper, except the way you construct the sentences is totally different. You write very short sentences. You start with a vision. I mean, essentially you have to start with a vision, and then you have to present what happens if your vision doesn't come to pass and what happens if your vision does come to pass. And obviously the greater story that you want to tell is what happens when your vision does come to pass. And you know, just like a research paper, you need to compile all the facts that support your argument. But I think what's really makes a speech good is when you can connect on a human level. So when you can tell someone else's story and have their story make your point for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true in any kind of communications. You need to express what's human about what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. recently, and sort of looking back at some of his speeches that he's done, and they all had this wonderful visual quality to it, where he used such imagery to convey his points. So I really like that idea of bringing whatever high-level ideas you're talking about down to the basic human experience. I mean, that seems like maybe one of the pillars of what it means to be a good communicator, right? Is to be able to have empathy for the audience.
Yeah, definitely. Martin Luther King's speeches were such an inspiration for me when I was a speechwriter, and I think part of the strength of his speeches is he makes reference to ideas that resonate with everyone. He references the Bible, he references founding fathers, and that's something you'll see in all political speeches. I mean, but you have to pick the founding fathers or the ideas that resonate with your boss and that idea. So it's about curating the experience of the listener and making sure that you're weaving it into something that can still be listened to. Because the experience of reading something and listening to it is very, very different. And like I said, I mean, you'll see this. Martin Luther King doesn't have extremely long sentences. You don't want people to get lost in what you're saying. You want to make short, powerful points. And yeah, I think speechwriting is an interesting thing to do for a while.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I can't imagine the skills that you must have gained from that, just on a personal level, you know, being like extremely clear with your ideas. I'm sure that, you know, you definitely can, you know, make a point. I know this for a fact, actually, a clear and solid point. And like in terms of, because I was gonna ask, you know, both of you guys have worked with organizations in the past and work with them now, but how has your sort of individual communication, have you noticed any kind of, I guess, differences, or how maybe ways that you've been influenced from like this organizational communication experience to you know, change the way that you personally communicate? Have you noticed anything different, or like does it feel different to you now to like kind of switch from organizational to person?
Yeah, for me, I've noticed a difference. We were both English majors at the same college, actually, and when I graduated, my writing was like very flowery, and I thought it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty verbose. And it's funny because I can look back at emails now that I wrote in 2008 and see how different they were. I'm much more to the point and terse now in emails and text messages than I was then, and I care less about grammar and in like personal communication than I did before.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that my college and like just post-college writing was a lot more verbose, but I sometimes read back on those things and I think I explored ideas a little bit more in depth than I do now.
You too. I was more imaginative.
So I don't know if it's better, but it's definitely more to the point. I mean, writing for a politician or for a business is a totally different game than exploring like the outer reaches of your creativity.
Yeah.
Which is what we were doing in college.
Yeah, and then I miss that. I feel like I've lost something, but I think it can be regained.
So yeah, what ways do you guys explore your creativity when you're not, doing organizational communication? What other ways of communicating do you like in particular?
Well, I am an avid journal writer, and I like to write in my journal almost every day. Sometimes I write fiction. Mostly I create a semi-fictionalized account of my own day. And I've kept journals my whole entire life, and I really, I need to do it. Like, if I don't express myself in writing at the end of most days, I feel like I can't fully experience my day. And it's really incredible for everyone, all my friends, to go back and read these journals. I put a 5-year embargo on all of my journals, so they can be read. And the embargo on my college one just expired, which was a good day for so that's my primary creative outlet.
We have a little routine where I will read Jessica's middle school journals in a voice that I imagined she had in middle school, and do live performances of her journal, basically just for us.
But we did actually feel that our journal performances were so strong that we tried out for a play that was about, it was in Arlington, Virginia, and somehow in the midst of at the height of our journal play acting, there was a play that was focused on journal play acting, and so we tried out. We didn't get it.
They wouldn't let us do it because they thought that I was making fun of her.
Oh no.
Journal, yeah.
Little did they know that this was actually art.
Yeah.
Charlatans. They can't even tell. That sounds really, I'm a journal writer too, and I like the idea of having a slightly fictionalized account of the day, sort of almost, like what could have happened sometimes, or, just kind of like blur the edges of a few things. Yeah, I like that a lot. I need to try that.
You should.
And what about you? So, and, we were talking about Cameron's poetry. How do you explore sort of like the bleeding edges of, creativity and communication and writing, from the after your day of, doing kind of heavy drug policy stuff?
I don't think I'm on the bleeding edge of anything, but I always had hoped that I would be a journal writer, and I'm just not disciplined enough. So I admire Jessica greatly for her dedication to her journal. I think I save up a lot of my feelings and ideas, and then they kind of come out in these concentrated bursts, and those end up being poems. But I collect snippets. I actually use, when I had an iPhone, I used the notes function to collect snippets, ideas, observations on the metro, walking home, or whatever it was. And now I use a different app that I have on Android, but I sort of wait until something's built up, and then that'll come out as a poem. And I haven't done this in a while, but I like to do a voice memo of myself reading a poem that I want to memorize, and then when I'm on long walks, listen to it over and over again until I've memorized the poem.
That's a really good idea. I did that actually one time before with some of Shakespeare's stuff. and I was gonna do some sort of performance, and it really helped to hear it in your own voice too. You know, there's actually, so I was talking to a friend she started doing iPhone and also Android S4 ethnography, and it's sort of, you know, building off this like iPhone photography idea where just a simple smartphone can really like unlock so much creative potential, you know, for communication. And some of the new apps now for the photos is you can take a photo and then do a voice recording over that photo, or you know, have all these different variations of like voice recording, video, and photo, and tons of new effects as well, and ways to edit it. And so I really like this idea of sort of you know, being able to like capture what's going around you in like all of these different forms. You know, not only just writing, but like speaking mixed with photo, or, you know, like different combinations that you wouldn't expect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had never really thought of moving beyond my journal, but one person I really like to capture in my life is my grandmother, and I just started recording her instead of documenting what she was saying in my journal. And I think that there will be more interesting multimedia ways to journal in the next few years.
Mm-hmm, totally. I mean, already with Evernote, so for Christmas I got an Evernote Moleskine, and I haven't started using it yet, but basically it's like designed to work with the app, and you can just like take notes, do it, photo, like also like on Evernote, I'm sure you guys know, but you know, you can capture web pages and then have it all be filed together under whatever tagging system, and that sort of makes a lot of sense for me, I think, because I'm like, my journals are extremely disorganized, where like I'll write, you know, everything from like every aspect of my life, you know, whether it's work or school or play, and then they'll all be in one journal instead of like having it be separate journals. And so with Evernote, you can allow yourself to be disorganized, or like allow yourself to be, you know, free with how you communicate in one medium, and then be able with the technology to like transfer that into a new medium and then reorganize it, even though that may not have been so easy to do if it was in an old school journal, which I think is kind of cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like playing with how our minds communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take a little break, and then when we come back, I'm going to pick your brains about what kinds of brands or organizations or individuals' stories you like in particular. So stick around, and we'll be back for a little bit. My name is Lindsay K. Wilbur. We're on the Millennial Entrepreneur, streaming live to you from Pioneer Plaza, thinktechhawaii.com. Go check it out.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Hori for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Hori. Mahalo.
What were the brands that we talked about?
Aloha and welcome back to the Millennial Entrepreneur. My name is Lindsay K. Wilbur. We're here with Cameron Hardsty, the amazing poet, and also Jessica Straus, the Director of Communication and Journal Writer Extraordinaire. Watch out what you do around here. It will be recorded for time immemorial. And, you know, we'll all be reading it in the next 5 years. So, you guys, you are sort of in, you know, like you've been like living in New York and DC, and you're on the, you know, cutting edge of what's going on there. We're here in the provinces of the Empire. The weather's great, but I'm wondering what you've seen in terms of really amazing communication, like really interesting stuff that kind of catches your eye, whether it's a, you know, brand or a magazine or a publication, you know, any kind of, you know, communicator doing the communicating. Have you guys noticed anything in particular that you'd like to point out?
This is a really hard question for us to answer because the world is so vast of brands, especially brands now are doing so much more.
And I guess it doesn't have to be one in particular, but maybe like different techniques that you've been noticing, or just what kind of things you've been noticing that have stood out to you.
One thing that really captures my attention is when this brand or celebrity interacts with your real life in a very unexpected way. So I just to take an example from pop culture that caught my attention and I thought was a good idea was Will Ferrell has just been an Anchorman 2, and now he's going to local affiliates around the country and broadcasting as, part of their team. And they've done an incredible job of making that seem so real. And this is, if you go to any of these branding or marketing conferences, you'll keep hearing this word authentic. And it seems kind of difficult for any brand to come off as really authentic. So you have to create something that like truly resonates with people. And humor is one really good way to do that, which is why having Will Ferrell be Ron Burgundy in real life is such an interesting and captivating thing. But if I think of a brand or something that's doing a good job of being authentic, I'm struggling to think of
While you're thinking about that, I was just reminded of something when you were talking about Will Ferrell being the Anchorman, sort of live action role playing style, a little bit LARPing. There was this really great project in San Francisco recently. I think it was part of Make-A-Wish Foundation, where a little kid really wanted to be Batman. And the entire city of San Francisco basically, came out to support him and play along with this fantasy and sort of, tell this story together as a town. And I just really loved that. And it sort of reminded me of the Will Ferrell idea of, this story, this narrative, this fictional world, like sort of coming at you and breaking the fourth wall, and then making you realize too that a lot of worlds are just construction, human constructed stories that we've told ourselves, and we can tell ourselves any story that we want. Yeah, like Ron Burgundy is, doing, I think he was doing something like bullfighting, commentary. I forget what it was he was commentating, but it was some sort of silly, like weird sport like that. But like these things can actually, you can play with them in real life. And, like with so much, that's like complemented by digital strategy. But I love it when that kind of digital world comes into my physical world. Even if that's like seeing some sort of like graffiti sticker with a little link on it, or one of those QR codes, right, exactly, that you can just scan and then you're taken to this place, and then suddenly you're in like this digital narrative, but it sort of moves in between those two, like the Millennial Trains project as well. Like that just made me think, what are the ways that I can capture this digitally, but then also just blending those two worlds is like, I think something that more movies are going to be doing, I would say. I've been hearing like a lot of transmedia, telling stories over multiple platforms that a lot of Hollywood, big blockbusters are trying to do, and like add in these narrative layers. But I'm wondering if more brands are going to try to do that aggressively. And then politicians, like, are politicians going to, when are they going to get a little crazy with their media? Like, I want to know.
Some of them already are. We were talking about this before we started this segment, but I think Cory Booker does a really interesting job on social media because he doesn't act like a politician on social media. Like a couple weekends ago, it was like a Sunday afternoon, and he was like, okay, it's Sunday shout out day, so like just mention me if you want me to give you a shout out on Twitter. And he spent like 2 hours just like shouting out to constituents on Twitter, and it like people loved it, and he got more followers. I mean, there's no political gain, like he wasn't raising money, it was just fun. And I think that the next generation of politicians are going to be digital natives like us, and they're going to be using social media more authentically. And he's kind of like a harbinger, I think, of things to come, hopefully, in politics at least.
that's so interesting. And I wonder, sorry, what were you going to say, Jess?
Oh, I was just going to add one thing that I think is an underlying theme of everything we've talked about, whether it's Cory Booker speaking directly to his constituents through Twitter, or this idea of live action role playing kind of mixing with celebrity, is people are looking for experiences that are immersive. And I think a lot of brands are trying to immerse their consumer in an amazing experience. Like Lululemon, you can go there and buy the yoga clothes and also take a yoga class. And Nike had this really interesting ad in Washington Square Park in New York this summer that was, it was a tunnel that you walked through, and it did not seem like it was something that was from Nike. It was just basically an art installation, and you walked through it, and you took your shoes off, and you were walking on different textures, and you were hooked up, your head was hooked up to these like tubes, and there was a picture of what your brain looked like when your feet were on these different textures.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
As you walked through, your brain was responding to grass or stone, and at the end, all of the photos of your brain were printed in color, and you got this sort of artwork of your brain on these different textures. And that was a Nike ad. So I think that there's a lot you can do to interact with people in a completely unexpected way, which is kind of like the Millennial Trains Project, because, I mean, the experience of being on a train with a small group of people for 10 days is completely immersive, and that's part of the draw of it, is you're in this completely different world. You're on these 3 train cars, you're moving through the country, and people want to be immersed in that, in the community that we created.
And speaking from a digital strategy perspective, it's a good digital strategy all goes back to good content, and good content comes from things that happen in the real world. You can't just conjure up, I mean, good writing is good content, but great video, great photos all come from real things that happen. If you're not doing anything interesting, then your digital communications probably will reflect that.
Right, so there's no digital strategy good enough for not getting up off your couch.
Yeah, basically. I mean, like, going back, this is starting to sound like an infomercial for Millennial Trains Project, but going back to Millennial Trains Project, I mean, it was a huge amount of effort, money, and time that went into that trip, and we were on a train for 10 days, and like one of the best pieces of content that came out of that is like a 6-minute video. I mean, when you think about it, it took all of those people, all of that time, all of those resources, and the end result is this amazing but 6-minute video. Like, you have to put so much time and effort into what you do in order to create compelling, interesting content that's like valuable to people who are looking to you for information.
Absolutely. That's certainly something, E.E. Cummings or, Boshu or any great poet would agree with. Or I think anybody who uses words or communicates, there's so much more that is really beneath, what is displayed in the communications, I guess. There's like so much more that happens that, inspires and affects us in order to be able to communicate well. And I think that I really hope that we get more of the immersive experience design here with some of our retail agencies, especially in Waikiki, which at one point was the height of experience design. Tourists from the mainland would be shepherded in on these big cruise liners, and they would see the stunning beaches of Waikiki and get, the local Hawaiian indigenous experience. And a lot of the reason why maybe that sort of, gone down in popularity, or at least that like ethos, the tiki chic has, kind of slowly had a downward trajectory, is because there isn't that participation anymore. When you walk down the streets of Waikiki, it's ads, it's stuff that you see that you kind of consume passively, but there is no interaction, there is no authenticity really anymore. It's very plastic, and as we see this trend taking off in some of our major coastal cities and some of the mainland, major areas, we definitely want to embody that here in Hawaii and try to, tell our story better. I think we have a really great story here, and I think it just needs the right people to tell it. So thank you guys so much. We're gonna take a little break and then finish, actually we are gonna wrap it up now. But thank you both for being on the show. It was amazing talking with you, and I look forward to chatting with you further off air, but nonetheless. So my name is Lindsay K. Wilbur. This is the Millennial Entrepreneur, and we're streaming live to you from Think Tech's headquarters here in Pioneer Plaza. So aloha and thank you.
Thanks.